Hello, Night Seekers, and welcome to Lacuna Noir. This is where forgotten stories and gentle voices meet, carrying you softly into peaceful sleep, wrapped in mystery. Before tonight's stories begin, I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from? Drop a comment below and let me know. And a little note before we begin. You may notice a few brief ads in the first 10 minutes, but after that, the rest of the video is completely ad-free. Just you, the silence, and the stories. So settle in, get comfortable, and let the night carry you. If you're drawn to these quiet, shadowed nights, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss a story when darkness calls. My mother died when my sister and I were still children. I remember the room where it happened more clearly than I remember most things from that age. I remember the smell, the terrible silence between every breath, and the expression on my father's face as he knelt beside her. He looked like someone had reached inside him and was slowly pulling everything out. Mom's final words were spoken to him. "See you soon." Then she was gone. My father stayed on his knees for a long time afterward. He barely spoke for weeks. My sister and I didn't know how to help him. We were children. We didn't understand grief, death, or what losing the person you loved most could do to someone. Then one day, Dad finally got dressed and left the house. For the first time in weeks, I thought maybe things were going to get better. He returned carrying 6 brown bottles. I didn't know what they were at first. I only knew that when he opened one, it smelled like something that could burn. After that, my father was never really the same. He drank more than he spoke, and somehow, he still spoke enough to hurt us. Some nights he blamed me for how expensive everything was. Other nights he blamed my sister for Mom's death. There were times he would sit alone in his recliner with a bottle hanging loosely from one hand, whispering Mom's name. Sometimes he sang to himself until he passed out. And somehow, despite everything, we still loved him. We were too young to understand that his pain didn't excuse what he was becoming. Instead, my sister and I came to a simpler conclusion. Mom had died. Dad had become miserable because Mom was gone. Therefore, if we could bring Mom back, Dad would become our father again. That was how 2 grieving children decided to catch their mother's soul from the ghost train. We had heard the legend from other kids. Everyone told it differently, but the important parts never changed. Every Friday night, somewhere in the open valley beyond town, there were abandoned railroad tracks that cut through the woods. Those tracks hadn't been used in years. Trees grew between them. Roots pushed sections of rail out of the earth. In some places, the tracks were so twisted that no real train could possibly travel over them. But on Friday nights, according to the legend, a train still came. Not a normal train. A train for the dead. It supposedly carried souls away from our world and into whatever came afterward. Some people said the passengers were peaceful. Others said they weren't. The version we heard most often described carriages filled with dead people who hadn't accepted their deaths. They screamed from the windows. They begged for second chances. They clawed at the seats and doors, desperate to return to the living. Some wanted forgiveness. Some wanted revenge. Some wanted one more conversation with someone they loved. Some simply didn't want to disappear. The train carried all of them away. There were rules, too. There are always rules in stories like that. Don't stand directly on the tracks. Don't breathe while the train passes. Don't let the workers see you. Bring coins. And if you're foolish enough to climb aboard, don't expect everything inside to follow the same rules as the world outside. None of that frightened us enough to stop us. We had watched our father slowly destroy himself after Mom died. Compared with that, a train full of ghosts didn't seem so terrible. We made our plan. We would wait beside the tracks. When the train passed, we would climb onto the final carriage. Then we would search every car until we found Mom. We even brought a small glass bottle because we had heard you could trap a soul inside one if you did it correctly. We genuinely believed it. That's the thing about children. Sometimes belief is stronger than fear. That Friday night, my sister and I slipped away from home and walked toward the valley. The grass was tall enough to brush our shins. Insects jumped through it as we walked, scattering around our legs. Neither of us spoke much at first. Eventually, I asked, "What do you think Mom looks like now?" My sister thought about it. Then she raised both arms and made a stupid face. "I bet she looks like a zombie." I laughed. "No way. Yes, she does. I bet she still has that huge dent in her head." My sister immediately stopped smiling. "No," her voice cracked. I regretted saying it. She sniffled. "She's going to be beautiful." I didn't answer. "She's an angel now," she continued. She said it like she needed me to agree. So I did. Yeah, I squeezed her hand. "She's probably beautiful." Then my sister asked something I wasn't prepared for. "Do you think she still has our little brother in her belly?" I didn't answer. Mom had been pregnant when she died. That was one of those facts adults tried not to discuss around us, as if children couldn't understand when something horrible had happened. We understood enough. We eventually reached the tracks. They looked worse than I expected. Dead trees surrounded them. Thick roots had pushed beneath the rails, lifting them at strange angles. Young trees had grown directly through sections of the track. No ordinary train could have used them. I remember staring down that ruined railway and wondering whether we had been stupid. Then we heard it, a distant chugging sound. My sister grabbed my arm. "Do you hear that?" I nodded. The sound grew louder and louder. Then the birds started leaving. Hundreds of them burst from the trees, maybe thousands. The entire forest seemed to explode with wings. "It's here," I shouted. We hurried behind several twisted trees beside the tracks. Then the train appeared. Even now, I struggle to describe what seeing it felt like. It didn't approach like something mechanical. It emerged from the darkness, like the darkness had created it. A huge locomotive pushed through the forest, surrounded by pale mist. It didn't care about the broken tracks. It didn't care about the trees growing through them. It simply passed through everything. My sister squeezed my hand. "Hold your breath." We both inhaled deeply. Then we stopped breathing. The locomotive thundered past. Cold wind struck my face. Not ordinary night air. This cold went through my clothes and into my bones. Then I heard the passengers. Moaning, crying, screaming, voices filled the train. Some begged. Some sounded angry. Others sounded like people crying at funerals. I closed my eyes. My sister's hand tightened around mine. We waited. The engine passed. Then carriage after carriage followed. Finally, the last one approached. We moved. We ran toward the tracks and jumped. My hands caught the railing. For a second, my feet dragged beside the train. Then I pulled myself onto the rear platform. My sister landed beside me. We had done it. We were aboard the ghost train. Only then did we breathe again. The wind screamed around us. "Do you have the coins?" I asked. She dug through her pocket. I heard them clinking. "Yeah." Then she smiled nervously. "And I brought this." She pulled out Mom's wedding ring. My stomach dropped. "You took that?" She nodded. According to one version of the legend, something belonging to the dead could help you see things hidden from ordinary eyes. My sister held the wedding ring over one eye like a tiny golden lens. Dad's ring was gone. He had thrown it into the river after Mom died. So hers was the only one left. We reached the door. I opened it. There should have been a train carriage on the other side. There wasn't. There was darkness. Not dimness, not shadow. Darkness, absolute darkness. My sister raised the flashlight. The beam disappeared. It illuminated nothing. It was as though the blackness consumed the light itself. I looked at my sister. She put Mom's ring over one eye. Then she took my hand. We stepped inside. The door closed behind us. Immediately, every sound disappeared. The train vanished beneath our feet. No wheels, no engine, no wind. I couldn't even hear myself breathing. I could only feel my sister's hand. We walked. The carriage was impossibly large. From outside, it should have taken seconds to cross. Inside, we walked for minutes, maybe longer. There was no way to measure time. My sister guided us. Her hand trembled. I wanted to take the ring from her so I could see whatever she was seeing, but I couldn't. It belonged to Mom, so I followed. Eventually, I heard something, a breath. I squeezed my sister's hand twice. She stopped, then squeezed twice back. She heard it too. Another breath joined the first, then another. Soon there were dozens, hundreds, maybe thousands. The darkness filled with gasping. Not normal breathing. It sounded like dead lungs desperately trying to inhale. My sister stopped breathing. So did I. Something moved near my ear. A wheezing gasp came so close, I could almost feel it. I held my breath. My chest started hurting. My head became light. The gasping continued around us. Things whispered in the darkness. Choked, scratched, waited. My lungs finally betrayed me. I exhaled. Something grabbed my arm. The hand was enormous, ice cold. Long, rough fingers dug into my skin. I nearly screamed. The grip tightened until I felt my flesh shift beneath those fingers. My sister pulled me. I couldn't move. Whatever held me was stronger. Then my sister released my hand for half a second. I heard something hit the floor. Coins. Instantly, the entire darkness changed. The gasping became frantic. Thousands of hands scraped against the floor. Whatever had grabbed me released my arm. My sister caught my hand again. We ran. Behind us, things fought over the coins. Hands slapped the floor. Bodies dragged through darkness. We ran until my lungs burned. Then suddenly, my sister stopped. A rectangle of light appeared ahead. A door. I ran through it. I fell face first onto the floor of a passenger carriage. Light, seats, windows, everything returned. A second later, my sister stumbled through behind me. Her face was scratched and bleeding. Her sleeves were torn. I stared at her. What was in there? She collapsed onto her knees. What did you see? She shook her head. I don't want to be here anymore. She started crying. I want to go home, but Mom's still here. She looked at me. Please. Without Mom, neither of us spoke. The train continued moving. I tried acting brave. We're already through the worst part. I raised my fists and threw a few ridiculous punches. Besides, those things were lucky it was dark. If I could see them, I would have destroyed them. She laughed. Just a little. Then she smiled. I still remember that smile. If I had known it would be the last one I ever saw on her face, I would have looked at it longer. We continued through the carriage. It appeared empty. Rows of leather seats stretched ahead. There were old refreshment carts positioned along the aisle. Then my sister stopped beside a window. Our town was outside. We were passing it. The houses moved slowly across the view. Almost every home was dark, except ours. Smoke drifted from the chimney. Dad stood outside on the lawn. His hands rested on his hips. Maybe he was looking for us. Maybe he was drunk. Maybe both. I wondered if he was scared. Then my sister squeezed my hand twice. our signal. I immediately held my breath, but something had already entered the carriage. Cold mist poured between the seats. Within seconds, I couldn't see more than a few feet. My sister moved closer. Something's watching us. I turned. At the far end of the carriage stood a shape. Tall, much too tall. Its arms were too long. Its fingers were even longer. For one frozen second, it simply watched. Then, its hands moved. Black fingers tore through the mist toward us. Fast, impossibly fast. I blinked. My sister jumped in front of me. A black hand wrapped around her head. I saw her body jerk. Then the thing pulled backward. There was a horrible movement. And suddenly, my sister's head was gone. Her small body collapsed. It twitched once. Then again. The creature disappeared. My sister didn't move. I remember screaming. I charged toward where the thing had been. There was nothing there. Just mist. I fell. I cried until breathing hurt. I curled beside my sister's body and stayed there for what might have been minutes or hours. Eventually, I looked through the window. The sky was beginning to brighten. Morning was coming. The train's journey was almost over. I couldn't stay there. We had come for Mom. My sister had died trying to reach her. I searched her pockets. Then I found the bottle. One little glass bottle. We had only brought one. It had been meant for Mom. I stood. I walked toward the next carriage. My throat hurt. My lungs hurt. Everything hurt. I reached the door and opened it. This carriage wasn't empty. It was packed. Men, women, children, workers, soldiers, people in suits, people in clothing from different eras. Some wore almost nothing, all dead. And almost all of them were crying. Let Emmy out. A man slammed against the window. Another person screamed for someone named Mary. A woman begged to see her daughter. Others simply sat and sobbed. The grief inside that carriage was overwhelming. Nobody seemed to notice me. I pushed through them. Outside, sunrise was beginning. I passed soldiers, monks, workers, old men, young women, children, every person trapped inside their own final regret. Then I saw her. Mom, she was sitting beside my sister. My sister's headless body had somehow reached her before I did. She clung to Mom's pregnant belly. Mom held her, stroked her shoulder, sang softly. There was still a terrible wound in Mom's temple. But she was beautiful, exactly like my sister had said she would be. Mom, she looked up. Her expression became terrified. Oh, God, she stood. Oh, God, baby, you're not supposed to be here. I ran to her. It's okay. I hugged her. I'm alive. She touched my hair. Honey, you need to leave. We came for you. I pulled out the bottle. We can take you home. Mom stared at it. Then she looked at my sister. She hugged her tighter. I don't want to leave. I didn't understand. What? I can't. Mom, Dad needs you. She closed her eyes. There are things you won't understand until you're older. Anger exploded through me. Mom, she flinched. Look what happened. I grabbed my sister's body. We came here for you. My sister reached blindly toward Mom. Her arms found me instead. She wrapped them around my body. Her neck ended in a terrible stump against my shoulder. She was terrified. Even without a face, I could feel it. She wanted Mom. Then take her. Mom suddenly screamed. I stared at her. Take your sister. Mom curled forward and started crying. I can't go back. Why? Your father is a bad man. The words silenced me. Please, she looked at us. Let me rest. Outside, the red morning sky was becoming blue. Time was running out. I started crying again. Mom, my voice sounded small. I don't know what to do. I wasn't brave anymore. I'm scared. Her expression softened. Oh, come here, Junebug. That name destroyed me. She hadn't called me that since before she died. I fell into her arms. For one moment, everything disappeared. The screaming passengers, the train, the dead, the fear. I could smell her, feel her warmth. I was a child again. Then there was a rushing sound beside me. I pulled away. My sister was gone. Mom was holding the bottle. I stared at it. She had made the decision for me. My sister's soul was inside. Mom, remember something for me. Her voice shook. I love you. She kissed me. I'm sorry for being a coward. She held my face between her hands. Please understand someday. The train started disappearing around us. Mom, please forgive your dumb mama. Then, everything vanished. I was standing beside the abandoned tracks. Morning sunlight covered the valley. Birds sang in the trees. There was no train, no screaming, no mist, no dead passengers, only me and the bottle. I looked down. Something moved faintly inside it. My sister. Mom had stayed behind. She had chosen death. She had chosen peace. But she had sent my sister back with me. I stood beside those ruined tracks for a long time, holding that tiny bottle against my chest. All I had to do was open it. That was what we had been told. Open the bottle. Release the soul. Bring her back. Simple. But my fingers wouldn't move. Because suddenly I understood something that had never occurred to either of us when we planned this. We had spent the entire night trying to bring back someone who didn't want to return. And now I was holding my sister's soul in my hands. I didn't know if opening that bottle would bring her back to life. I didn't know if it would release her spirit. I didn't know if she would return whole. I didn't know if the thing that came back would even be my sister. The bottle felt cold. Then something tapped against the glass from inside. Once, I froze. Then, twice. 2 little taps. The same signal my sister had used on the train. 2 squeezes meant she'd heard something. 2 squeezes meant danger. 2 squeezes meant hold your breath. My hands began shaking. The birds around me suddenly stopped singing. Every single one. The valley became silent. And somewhere far behind me, beyond the trees, I heard it again. Chug, 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 the ghost train was coming back. I looked at the bottle. Something tapped twice from inside again. I ran. I didn't look behind me. I didn't stop until the tracks were miles away. And through the entire journey home, I kept hearing those 2 tiny taps against the glass. Again, and again, and again. I still hadn't opened the bottle. In 1974, Jane Goodall witnessed something at Gombe that changed the way people thought about chimpanzees. A community she had been observing had begun to split. The Kasakela and Kahama groups, once connected, became increasingly hostile toward each other. The tension eventually turned into organized violence. The first killing was especially disturbing. A lone Kahama male was feeding in a tree when 6 adult males from the Kasakela community found him. They approached together. He tried to escape, but they caught him, dragged him down, and attacked him as a group. They beat him, bit him, crushed him into the ground, then left him to die. That was the beginning of what would later become known as the Gombe Chimpanzee War. For years, Goodall had spent her life showing the world how intelligent, emotional, and socially complex chimpanzees were. She saw tenderness between mothers and infants, friendship, grief, cooperation. She had also believed, at least to some degree, that chimpanzees were more peaceful than humans. Then came the war. Territorial patrols, ambushes, infanticide, cannibalism, violence carried out not because an animal was cornered, but because members of one group deliberately hunted members of another. That realization disturbed Goodall deeply. Chimpanzees were not little peaceful forest people. They were something much more uncomfortable, something familiar. Our closest living relatives were capable of many of the same behaviors we like to believe belonged uniquely to us. And maybe that should have warned me. My name is James. I'm a wildlife photographer. Not world famous or anything, but I had done well enough that a few of my photographs had appeared in respected magazines. Mostly birds, large mammals, conservation pieces, things like that. Chimpanzees were always my real obsession. Part of it was the photography. They have such expressive faces that you almost forget you're looking at another species. Anger, boredom, affection, suspicion, it all feels disturbingly readable. But the real reason I loved them was their behavior. I had read practically everything I could about Goodall's work. The Gombe War fascinated me more than any other part. Not because I enjoyed the violence, because of what it meant. It suggested that organized conflict wasn't something humans invented after cities, agriculture, religion, borders, or politics. Maybe it was older, much older. Maybe some part of war existed before we were even human. So when a friend contacted me a little over 2 months ago and said another chimpanzee community in Tanzania appeared to be splitting, I became obsessed immediately. His name is Michael. He had lived in the region for years and worked with several local organizations. He wasn't a primatologist, but he knew enough researchers and guides to hear things early. His message was simple. Something strange happening with the chimps again. More aggression. Two groups forming. Lots of noise at night. I called him within minutes. What kind of aggression? I don't know yet. Deaths? Maybe. Have researchers documented it? Not properly. That was all I needed to hear. If another chimpanzee war was beginning and I could document the earliest stages, the photographs could become historically important. Not just magazine material, research material. Textbooks, museums, maybe my name would become attached to something meaningful. I booked a flight before I could talk myself out of it. Michael told me I could stay with him, so lodging was easy. I packed carefully. 2 camera bodies, several lenses, extra batteries, memory cards, portable chargers, satellite phone, water purification equipment, basic first aid, a small multi-tool with a knife. Michael suggested I bring something stronger. When I arrived, he actually held out a handgun. I laughed. You serious? Very. For chimpanzees? For anything. I'm not carrying a gun into a chimp community. You're not a researcher, James. You're going in mostly alone. I'll be careful. Michael kept holding it toward me. You know how strong they are? Yes. You know what they do when they attack people? Yes. Then take it. I still refused. I wasn't comfortable carrying a firearm, and honestly, I didn't want to enter the forest thinking like I was going to war. That seems incredibly stupid now. On my first day, Michael showed me around the nearby town. I spoke with locals. Most had heard more chimpanzee calls than usual. One man said he had seen groups moving in unusual directions. Another said monkeys had become harder to find near certain parts of the forest. Most people shrugged. Chimpanzees were chimpanzees. They made noise. They fought. Nothing revolutionary. Then, I met an older man who lived outside town. He was probably in his 70s. Thin gray beard. Long scar across one cheek. Michael said the man had spent decades following chimpanzees after becoming fascinated by Goodall's work. Supposedly, he had lived close to the forest for more than 40 years. I asked him about the possible split. He listened quietly, then said, "They are learning again." I remember smiling because I thought it was a language issue. What do you mean, learning? He looked toward the trees. They watch, of course. No, he shook his head. They watch us. I asked whether he meant chimpanzees copied humans. He didn't answer directly. Instead, he said, "Do not show them things you don't want them to keep." That sounded like superstition. I thanked him and left. If I had stayed another 10 minutes, maybe things would have been different. The next morning, I left early. The route wasn't particularly complicated. I had rough GPS coordinates and directions from Michael. Finding the chimpanzees took less time than expected. At first, it was exactly what I wanted. Mothers carrying infants, juveniles climbing through branches, adult males grooming, small groups feeding. I took hundreds of photographs. The light through the canopy was beautiful. For the first few hours, I felt like the luckiest person alive. Then, boredom set in. I know how terrible that sounds. You travel halfway around the world to see wild chimpanzees and then complain that they're behaving normally. But I had been expecting tension. War, patrols, something. Instead, they mostly ate. Rested, groomed, argued occasionally. Normal chimpanzee life. By early afternoon, I started wondering if Michael's information had been exaggerated. I moved farther, still carefully, still keeping distance. I found another subgroup. More photographs. Nothing, then. Late in the afternoon, I saw something unusual. Several adult males were gathered in a tight circle near a rocky patch. At first, I thought they were feeding. Then I noticed they weren't looking outward. All of them were focused on the ground. That was interesting. I moved to a position with better visibility and used a telephoto lens. The rocks were dark, black, sharp-looking. Obsidian, that alone didn't mean much. Chimpanzees use stones, they use sticks, they modify objects, they crack nuts, they fish for termites. Tool use is well documented, but this was different. One male picked up a broken branch. Another manipulated something near the end. I zoomed farther. My hands started shaking. They were pressing pieces of obsidian against the branch, not randomly. Deliberately, the branch had been coated in something sticky. Sap, resin, possibly both. Small fragments of volcanic glass clung to it. Then, the chimp rolled the branch against more pieces. The result was crude, extremely crude, but unmistakable. A club. A wooden club with obsidian fragments embedded near the striking end. I forgot to breathe. I took photograph after photograph. Chimpanzees can make tools. That wasn't the discovery. This was composite tool construction. One material being used to attach another functional material to a handle. There are huge debates over where exactly different prehistoric technological stages begin, but this was not normal chimpanzee behavior. Not even close. I started mentally writing the paper I wasn't qualified to write. Protolithic technology, composite weapon construction, independent innovation, cultural transmission. I thought about Australopithecus, early Homo, the transition from opportunistic stone use toward intentional tool production. Technically, the chimpanzees weren't shaping the obsidian itself. They weren't napping it. They were using naturally shattered pieces. That distinction mattered. Still, they had understood several things. Sharp material is useful. A branch provides reach and force. Sap can hold sharp material in place. Combine all three. Weapon, I couldn't understand how they had arrived at that idea. Maybe one accidentally pressed a sticky branch into broken obsidian. Maybe they copied something. Maybe this behavior had existed unnoticed. My heart was pounding. This was it, the discovery, the thing people remember. I kept photographing. Different males seemed to be involved. One prepared branches, another handled the resin, another struck a finished club against wood, testing it. That detail made me feel slightly uneasy. Then I heard movement behind them. A lone chimpanzee was watching, farther back, partly hidden by vegetation. It was clearly not part of the group. The males hadn't noticed him yet. I immediately thought, this is the conflict. Maybe he belonged to the other splinter group. I adjusted focus, document everything. That was my job. The hidden chimp moved slightly. A branch snapped. Every male turned. The entire mood changed. No warning display, no long screaming confrontation. One male launched forward. The watcher tried to run. He didn't make it far. Another cut him off. They grabbed him, dragged him down. I had read accounts of chimpanzee violence, seen footage. Nothing prepared me for being close enough to hear it. The first blow landed. A club struck flesh. There was a thick impact followed by a smaller, wet crack. The victim screamed. Another chimp struck him. Then another. Obsidian tore through skin. Blood appeared almost immediately. I kept taking pictures. I hate admitting that. Some part of me wanted to look away. Another part kept saying, this has to be documented. This matters. The blows became faster. Thud, crack, thud, wet, snapping. The victim stopped screaming before the others stopped attacking. They hit his arms. Head, chest, one club tore open the side of his face. Another blow exposed something pale beneath the skin. Bone the sound was worse than the sight. I have tried describing it since. Imagine someone smashing a watermelon with a hammer. Then imagine that there are smaller hard objects inside the watermelon breaking separately. Even that isn't right. Movies make violence sound clean. Real bones don't. Real flesh doesn't. There's no dramatic soundtrack. Just impact. Breathing, animal screams. Wetness, the fading light hid some of the details. I'm grateful for that. But not enough. By the end, the chimpanzee barely looked like an individual animal anymore. Blood, hair, tissue, broken bone, all mashed together. And the attackers seemed methodical. That was what scared me. Not frenzy, not blind rage. They were using the weapons effectively. One chimp would strike. Another adjusted position. Another prevented the victim from moving. That looked less like an animal fight, more like an execution. I took another photograph. The camera flash fired. I had accidentally changed the setting earlier. White light exploded through the trees. Every chimpanzee stopped. Silence. Then they looked at me. I knew immediately I had made the worst mistake possible. One male screamed. Another picked up his club. I ran. Everything after that became noise and movement. Branches slapping my face. My camera bouncing against my chest. Calls behind me. Not random calls. Contact calls. They were coordinating. I didn't know how many were chasing me. 3, 5, more, it didn't matter. One chimpanzee is dangerous. Several armed with obsidian-studded clubs or something else entirely. I ran as fast as I could. Humans are better endurance runners, I kept telling myself. Distance, get distance. But this wasn't open ground. This was forest. They climbed. Cut corners. Moved through vegetation I had to fight through. I heard branches breaking above me. One chimp struck a tree trunk with a weapon. Maybe communication. Maybe intimidation. I didn't care. The light was fading rapidly. I pulled out my satellite phone while running, almost dropped it. No time. Another scream came from my left. Then one from the right. They were spreading out, hurting me. That thought terrified me. I changed direction. Bad decision. My foot caught a root. I went down hard. My ankle twisted beneath me. Something cracked. Pain shot up my leg. I rolled onto my back. A chimpanzee stood over me. In that moment, he looked enormous. Not because chimpanzees are gigantic. Because I was on the ground, he held the club with both hands. His face was tense. Teeth visible. Blood covered the weapon. Probably not mine. Yet, I raised one arm. Wait, ridiculous, as if he would understand. The club came down. I closed my eyes. Impact. Pain exploded through my lower leg. I screamed. The obsidian fragments sliced through fabric and skin. Something tore deep. Hot blood immediately soaked my pants. I kicked with the other leg. Connected somewhere. The chimp staggered. I rolled away. Couldn't stand. My ankle and lower leg were both damaged. So I crawled. That sounds pathetic. It was. Hands, knees, one good foot. Drag the injured leg. Anything behind me, the chimp approached again. Then another arrived. Then another. Hollering, breathing, weapons striking the ground. I knew what would happen if they surrounded me. I had just photographed it. My brain kept replaying the other chimpanzee's body. That would be me. I pulled the multi-tool from my pocket. The knife blade was almost laughably small, completely useless against several chimpanzees. Then I saw my camera. The battery compartment. Lithium-ion battery. An idea came. Not a good idea. A desperate one. I pulled the lighter I carried for emergencies. Used the knife to cut and pry at the camera housing. The chimps slowed. Maybe because the sparks and movement were unfamiliar. I damaged the battery compartment. Exposed enough of it. Then heated and punctured where I could. The battery began swelling. Hissing, that scared me almost as much as the chimps. I threw the entire camera toward them. One chimp reacted exactly as I hoped. He hit it. The club smashed into the camera. The damaged battery failed violently. A burst, sharp boom, then flame. One chimp screamed. Another jumped backward. Leaves caught. Smoke rose. They scattered. Not far, but enough. I crawled, fast as I could. I left almost everything behind. Camera bag. Extra lens. Supplies. Evidence. Photographs. Probably the most important photographs I had ever taken. Gone. I only kept the satellite phone because it was clipped to me. The forest floor tore at my hands. My injured leg left blood behind. I remember thinking the trail would make me easier to follow. Nothing I could do about that. I crawled toward where I believed the road was. The calls faded, then returned. They were coming back. I nearly started crying. Come on, I said it to myself. Come on. Every movement hurt. Then I saw open space. Road. I pulled myself out of the vegetation. Collapsed. No traffic. Of course. I looked behind me. Shadows moved among the trees. I picked up a small rock, held it. For what? I have no idea. Maybe I intended to throw it at them. Then headlights appeared. A truck. Slow, I waved. Too weak. I threw the rock. It hit the side of the vehicle. The truck stopped. Door opened. Michael. He ran toward me. James, I have never been so happy to see another person. He looked at my leg, then at the forest. What happened? Drive, he tried asking again. Drive. He got me into the truck. As we pulled away, I looked back. 3 chimpanzees stood near the tree line. One held a club. They didn't chase the truck, they just watched. Michael had come searching because I hadn't returned by dark. He tracked my satellite phone location, then heard the explosion. If I hadn't carried the phone, I probably would have died. At the hospital, the damage turned out to be worse than I thought. Deep cuts, torn muscle, fracture, obsidian fragments embedded in the wound, surgery, infection risk. Doctors told me I might never walk normally again. That information barely registered. I was alive. For the first few days, I couldn't talk about what happened without shaking. Michael believed me eventually. At first, he thought I was describing ordinary chimpanzee aggression and exaggerating the tool. Then, a doctor removed several tiny obsidian fragments from my leg. Sap residue was still stuck to one. That changed his expression. We contacted people. Carefully, researchers, local officials. Nobody wanted the story spreading before verification. The location was revisited. The chimpanzees had moved. My camera equipment was gone. So was the body. The fire had burned only a small patch. They found damaged vegetation. Blood, nothing else. No clubs, no obsidian-covered branches, no clear proof. I had some photographs saved automatically to a secondary card stored elsewhere in my gear, but that bag had been abandoned too. So the images may be gone forever. That hurts. Not because of awards anymore. Because nobody will believe the scale of what I saw without them. There is another thing I have been thinking about constantly. How did they learn? The behavior doesn't feel like an obvious progression. Chimpanzees already use tools. They already use sticks as weapons occasionally. They already throw stones. But attaching sharp stone fragments to a club using resin, that's a leap. Not necessarily impossible, but strange. Then I remembered the old man. Do not show them things you don't want them to keep. I asked Michael about him. What was his name? Michael hesitated. Why? I want to talk to him. We went back after I was able to move with crutches. The house was empty, not recently empty. Abandoned, dust, rotted, collapsed section of roof. I looked at Michael. What the hell? He looked confused too. A local man told us nobody had lived there for years. I argued. I talked to him. The local man shook his head. Old chimp man? Yes, he died. When? Maybe 6 years ago. I thought he misunderstood. Michael had seen me speaking with him. At least, I thought he had. When I asked Michael directly, his face changed. I saw you standing near the house. With him. I didn't see anyone else. That conversation has bothered me more than almost anything. Maybe Michael simply wasn't paying attention. Maybe the local man was wrong. Maybe I met someone else. All possible. Then I remembered what the old man had told me. They watch us, not just people generally. Us, humans. I started researching old accounts from the region. Not formal studies. Local stories. Hunter reports. A few mentions of chimpanzees stealing tools. Watching people sharpen blades. Observing hunters using adhesive or bindings. Nothing solid. Then Michael sent me a photograph. It was taken by a motion-triggered camera placed near the same chimpanzee range after my attack. 3 males, one holding something. The image was blurry, but clearly visible. A branch. At the end were dark, sharp fragments. Obsidian, so the behavior had spread, or at least survived. A second image appeared 2 days later. Different chimpanzee, different weapon. This one was more advanced. The fragments were arranged along one side instead of randomly stuck around the end, almost like an edge. Crude, still crude, but intentional. Then came another photograph. A chimpanzee sitting near a tree, holding a stone in one hand, another stone in the other. The next image showed him striking them together. That was when I stopped feeling excited. If they begin deliberately shaping stone, we are not talking about an interesting isolated behavior anymore. We are talking about technological culture. And culture spreads. One individual learns, another watches. Young chimps imitate adults. Different communities encounter each other. Some behaviors disappear. Others survive. The same thing happened to us. Fire, stone, spears, blades, except chimpanzees already understand territorial violence. They already conduct patrols. They already kill neighbors. They already cooperate during attacks. Now imagine adding increasingly effective weapons. I know what people will say. Chimpanzees are endangered. Their populations are small. They aren't going to conquer cities. Obviously, that isn't what scares me. I'm worried about what happens inside their ecosystem. Monkeys are already prey. Other chimp groups are already enemies. Humans entering forests are already occasionally attacked. A weapon doesn't need to threaten civilization to radically change behavior. A single technological advantage can change who survives, who breeds, which group expands. And if the weapon use is connected to warfare, then selection itself may begin favoring the individuals best at making and using them. That sentence sounds dramatic, I know, but I saw what those clubs did. The chimpanzee they killed had no chance. Then there's the question I hate most. Did they invent them? I used to think yes. Now I'm not sure. Several weeks after returning home, I received a package. No return address. Inside was one memory card. My memory card. The one from the camera I threw. The plastic was burned around one edge. I stared at it for almost an hour before putting it into a reader. Most files were corrupted. A few survived. Mothers, infants, normal photographs. Then the Obsidian group. Clear images. Proof. Everything I had wanted. The weapons. The resin. The attack. I almost cried. Then I reached the final photograph. I did not remember taking it. It was captured seconds before the flash gave me away. The chimpanzees were huddled around the obsidian. At first, everything looked familiar. Then I noticed something behind them. A person, standing between two trees. Old, thin, gray beard. Scar on his cheek. The man I had spoken to outside town. He was watching the chimps. One of them looked directly at him. The old man held something in his hands. A wooden shaft. And a stone. He was showing them how to attach one to the other. I zoomed in. His mouth was open. Maybe speaking. Maybe smiling. Then I noticed his left hand. It wasn't human. Not completely. The fingers were too long. Dark hair covered the back of it. I stopped looking. I sent the photograph to Michael. He called immediately. You need to delete this. What? Delete it. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Yes, who is he? I don't know. You told me he died. I told you what people said. What the hell is his hand? Michael didn't answer. Then he said, James, there's something else. What? The motion cameras. My stomach tightened. What about them? They're gone. Stolen? We don't know. All of them? All then and the chimps moved. Where? Closer to town. I sat in silence. He continued. Livestock went missing yesterday. That could be anything. Maybe a leopard. Maybe, what do you think? Michael breathed slowly. Then said we found a goat. I didn't ask. He told me anyway. Its body had been beaten apart. Several narrow cuts went deep into the skull. Glass fragments were found inside. Obsidian, I haven't returned. I don't plan to. My leg still hurts every day. Doctors were right. I can walk, but not normally. Cold weather makes the damaged nerves flare. Sometimes I wake at night remembering that first blow. The crunch, the glass cutting through muscle. I don't photograph primates anymore. I barely photograph wildlife at all. Maybe that sounds cowardly. I don't care. I've seen enough. There has been no major news story yet. Nothing international. Maybe authorities are keeping it quiet until they understand more. Maybe researchers don't want panic-threatening conservation efforts. I understand that. Chimpanzees don't deserve to be slaughtered because a few groups develop dangerous behavior. But silence has consequences, too. 2 days ago, Michael sent me his final message. No explanation. Just a video. It was filmed from inside his house. Night, the camera pointed toward the tree line. At first, I saw nothing. Then, shapes moved. Chimpanzees, several, standing unusually still near the forest edge. One held a club. Another held something longer. A branch sharpened at one end, spear-like. Then another chimp appeared carrying a burning object. Fire, not a wildfire, not something accidentally caught in flame. A controlled burning branch. Michael whispered from behind the camera, they watched us burn the trash yesterday. The chimp holding the fire moved closer. Another followed. Then another. The video ended. I tried calling Michael. No answer. Again, nothing. I contacted people near him. His house was empty the next morning. Front door open. No Michael. No obvious blood. But the yard had been disturbed, and on the exterior wall of the house, someone or something had made a series of black marks. Straight lines, grouped together. 4. Then another 4. Then another. I don't know whether they meant anything. Maybe scratches. Maybe coincidence. But I keep thinking about counting. Marks, recording, memory, culture. We like to look at human history and imagine there was a clean line somewhere. Before tools, after tools, before fire, after fire, before war, after war. But there was never a single moment. It happened gradually. One behavior, then another. One generation watching the previous one. Knowledge accumulating. That is what culture does. It remembers for individuals. Maybe we aren't watching chimpanzees enter some new stage. Maybe we're simply seeing what was always possible once the right idea entered the right group. And maybe the old man wasn't teaching them because he wanted to help them become like us. Maybe he was reminding them of something. The last surviving photograph on my memory card is the one I can't explain. It was taken after I dropped the camera. The timestamp places it almost 10 minutes after I threw the camera and the battery ignited. The lens was cracked. Image partially burned. But something triggered the shutter. The photograph shows the forest floor. My blood, my abandoned bag, and one chimpanzee crouched beside the camera. He is looking directly into the lens. In one hand is the obsidian club. In the other is my multi-tool. The blade is open. Behind him, several other chimpanzees are watching. And farther back, between the trees, the old man is standing with his arms folded. The chimpanzee holding my knife appears to be smiling. I know chimpanzee expressions don't work exactly like human ones. Showing teeth can mean many things. I understand that. But this one looks different, because the multi-tool is positioned carefully in his fingers. The blade is pressed against a piece of wood, and judging by the shavings on the ground, he has already figured out what it is for. So please understand me when I say this. I am not warning you that chimpanzees are going to take over the world. That would be ridiculous. I am warning you that somewhere in that forest, a population of chimpanzees is learning much faster than anyone expected. They already understand territory. They already understand ambushes. They already understand alliances, revenge, killing, and war. Now they are learning blades, fire, composite weapons. And perhaps most frightening of all, they are learning by watching us. Keep an eye on the news. Maybe nothing happens. Maybe researchers intervene. Maybe the behavior disappears. Maybe I'm connecting things that have nothing to do with each other because I'm traumatized and angry and still waking up with pieces of volcanic glass working their way out of my leg. I hope so. But if you hear about livestock disappearing near chimpanzee habitat, pay attention. If you hear about unexplained injuries involving sharp stone, pay attention. If someone reports chimpanzees carrying branches that look a little too carefully modified, don't laugh. Because I used to believe the most important thing Jane Goodall taught us was that chimpanzees are more like humans than we would like to admit. I think I was wrong. The important question isn't how much they are already like us. It's how much more like us they can become once someone teaches them where to start. Sorry to pause for just a moment. If this is your first time here, welcome. I hope you're enjoying the calm so far. If you'd like more nights like this, true stories, gentle rain, no interruptions, please subscribe to Lacuna Noir. It really helps me keep creating these peaceful experiences for you. And tap the bell so you're here every time a new story arrives in the dark. Now, back to the story. Sistine was the love of my life. I know people say that after somebody dies. Maybe death makes us kinder. Maybe grief turns normal relationships into perfect ones because the person who used to argue with you about dishes or grocery lists isn't there anymore to ruin the memory. That isn't what I mean. Sistine was difficult. She was stubborn to the point of being infuriating. If you suggested something before she thought of it herself, there was about a 50% chance she would refuse just because you had suggested it first. She hated being fussed over. She would argue when she was sick, insist she was fine while barely able to stand, and then get mad at you for looking worried. She could also make me laugh harder than anyone I've ever known. Her laugh started normal and usually ended in this ugly little snort she absolutely hated. If I pointed it out, she would either deny it or threaten to kill me. She crocheted constantly. Scarves, blankets, little stuffed animals. Granny squares, she claimed, would eventually become something, but mostly ended up in piles around the apartment. She could quote entire scenes from The Office and Scrubs almost perfectly, usually with enough dramatic commitment that I would stop whatever I was doing just to watch. She knew how to change a tire. Change oil. Replace windshield wipers. Check brake pads. The first time she saw me watching a YouTube tutorial on how to jump a battery, she stared at me for about 10 seconds and said, "How have you survived this long?" Then she showed me. She wore heels when she wanted to feel dangerous, bootcut jeans when she wanted to be comfortable, my hoodies when she wanted to annoy me because she stretched the sleeves. Whenever we hugged, she rested her head against my shoulder, like that spot had been designed specifically for her. I miss that most. The weight of her. Not heavy, just present. A person leaning against you without thinking about it because they know they belong there. I miss her every day. The problem is that, according to the rest of the world, Sistine never existed. It happened on a holiday. 4th of July, I think. Sometimes I wonder if it was Memorial Day instead. That scares me because there are parts of that day I can remember with painful clarity, yet simple details around it seem to move whenever I reach for them. I remember the red, white, and blue wreath hanging on our apartment door. Cheap plastic stars, wide ribbon. Sistine had called it aggressively patriotic and bought it anyway because it was on sale. I remember fireworks later, so I think it was the 4th. I remember the emergency room being packed. That also fits. Drunk people, burns, cuts, someone shouting about a missing finger. Sistine was 30, 2 weeks pregnant. The pregnancy had been complicated from the beginning. She had endometriosis and other issues her doctors had warned might make pregnancy difficult. Getting pregnant had been a surprise. Staying pregnant had become something we tried not to celebrate too loudly. Every appointment carried tension. Every ache scared me. Every time she said she didn't feel right, my brain immediately went to the worst place. Sistine hated that. That morning, she woke feeling sick, not nausea. Pain, she sat on the edge of the bed for a long time with one hand under her stomach. I noticed because she was unusually quiet. "You okay?" "Fine, you don't look fine. Thank you. Always nice to hear first thing in the morning. You know what I mean." She waved me away. "I'm pregnant, Dakota. I haven't felt normal in 7 months." I watched her stand. She stopped halfway, held on to the dresser. "That was enough. We're going in." No, yes, no arguments. That got me a look. Sistine hated being told what to do. I am not spending 6 hours in an emergency room because I have cramps. You're 30, 2 weeks pregnant. I'm aware. You have a high-risk pregnancy. Also aware. You can barely stand. That's dramatic. Then another wave of pain hit. Her face changed. She sat back down. I grabbed my keys. She muttered several words that probably weren't appropriate around an unborn baby. I asked whether I should call an ambulance. She looked at me like I had suggested transporting her by helicopter. Absolutely not. If something's wrong, you are driving me. Sistine, no ambulance. Why? Because I'm not paying $12,000 to ride 6 miles. I couldn't argue with that. I helped her into the car. Our baby's car seat was already installed in the back. Too early. I knew that. We had argued about it. I wanted it ready. She said seeing it made her nervous. Eventually, I installed it anyway. On the drive, I kept looking at her. That annoyed her, too. How are you feeling? D, pain worse? Dakota, scale of 1 to 10? She turned her head slowly. I love you. Okay, but if you keep talking, you are going to lose the physical ability to father another child. I shut up. She leaned back, closed her eyes. I looked in the rearview mirror. Car seat. Empty, I remember thinking. Stay empty a little longer. Not because I didn't want our baby. Because it was too soon. I wanted another 8 weeks. Another month, at least. More time. I would later learn there are things in this world that don't care how much time you think you are owed. At the hospital, they put us in an examination room. Forms, questions, insurance. Then we waited. And waited. The ER was overflowing. People filled the hallway. A man held a towel around one hand and kept insisting he only needed a couple stitches, even though the towel was soaked red. Somewhere nearby, a baby screamed almost continuously. Staff moved quickly, but there were never enough of them. 2 hours passed, maybe more. I stopped checking. Sistine shifted constantly on the bed. She complained about the smell. Hospitals made her nauseous. Then she complained that I was breathing too loudly. You're doing it again. What? Breathing like Darth Vader. I'm literally just breathing. Do it quieter. I tried. That made her roll her eyes. A few minutes later, I should have brought my crochet. You thought we were going to be here 10 minutes. I was optimistic. You fought me about coming. Still fighting you internally. She was joking. Mostly, but I noticed she kept touching the ring on her left hand. Not a real ring. Red yarn. Variegated crochet thread. The strand was fraying because she had been twisting it around her finger for hours. I reached over. Stop picking at it. She slapped my hand lightly. Stop parenting me. I'm practicing. She smiled. Then another pain hit. That smile disappeared. Eventually, several staff members entered. Nurse, doctor, another person I never identified. They took vitals, asked questions, checked the baby. Something about the monitor made the doctor's expression tighten. Sistine noticed. What? Just checking a few things. I hate when doctors say that. The nurse adjusted something. Another person entered. Then another. The room suddenly felt smaller. Sistine looked toward me. Her face had lost some color. Dee, I'm here. She reached one hand past the people surrounding her. Can you get me water? Sure, I took her hand. Squeezed? Cold? Yes. Anything else? New uterus. I smiled. See what they've got. She let go. That was the last time I knowingly touched her. I walked into the hallway. It took longer than expected to find water. The nearest vending machine was empty. I wandered farther. Finally found 2 machines near another waiting area. I put money in. Pressed the button. Bottle dropped. As I bent to retrieve it, alarms started. Not a building alarm. Medical, a voice over the speakers. People moving. Orders shouted. The wheels of a gurney squealing across the floor. I turned, saw a group coming toward me, then saw the patient. Sistine, I dropped the water. Ran, Sistine. She was surrounded by staff, moving fast. Someone squeezed a bag connected to her face. Her head rolled slightly. I couldn't tell whether she was conscious. What happened? No one answered. I followed. An orderly stepped in front of me. Sir, that's my girlfriend. I know, sir. Where are you taking her? You can't come through. What happened? He put both hands against my chest. Not aggressive. Firm, sir, we need space. I tried looking around him. Sistine disappeared around a corner. I heard words. Deceleration, hemorrhage, emergency C-section, fetal distress, maybe placental abruption. I don't know exactly what was said anymore. Medical language becomes meaningless when it applies to someone you love. All I understood was this. Sistine might die. Our baby might die. And I could do absolutely nothing. They took me to a waiting room, sat me down. I was placed between a woman bouncing a screaming infant and a television showing some soap opera where two beautiful people were arguing in a hospital room much cleaner than ours. I closed my eyes, leaned my head back, tried not to imagine blood. Sistine and I had met a little over a year earlier. Craft store. I had gone there looking for charcoal pencils because I had started sketching again after years of pretending I didn't miss art. I couldn't find them. Sistine noticed me walking up and down the same aisle for the third time. You lost? No, you look lost. I'm looking for charcoal. She pointed. 2 aisles over. I already checked. You checked drawing charcoal or barbecue charcoal? I stared. She smiled. Come on. She walked me over. Found them immediately. I said thanks. She held out her hand. My payment. I looked at it. For pointing, your number. That was Sistine. No hesitation. No subtlety. Within a few weeks, she had a toothbrush in my bathroom. Then crochet hooks. Then yarn. Then clothes. She never officially moved in. She simply took over one drawer at a time until asking her to go home stopped making sense, because apparently home had become my apartment too. I filled half a sketchbook with drawings of her, sleeping, crocheting, watching television, doing her makeup. She hated almost all of them. You make my nose too big. That is your nose. Then draw me a better one. When she properly moved in, the apartment changed almost overnight. Color everywhere. Paint and sip canvases, half-finished crafts, glitter glue, Mod Podge, yarn under the couch, yarn in the kitchen, yarn somehow inside the bathroom cabinet. I complained constantly. I would give anything to step on a crochet hook now. I told her I loved her about a month into dating. Not romantic. No candles, no planned speech. We were sitting on the couch watching a rerun of Scrubs, commercial break. She was messing with the tassel on a pillow. I just said, I love you. She looked at me, smiled, shrugged. Yeah, I figured. I threw the pillow at her. She laughed, then set it back. 6 months later, she told me she was pregnant over mashed potatoes. Again, no ceremony. We were eating dinner. She asked, is this butter or margarine? Butter, okay. A few bites. Then, I'm pregnant. I stopped chewing. She stared at her plate. Her face became bright red. Her cuticles were torn raw because she had been picking them all day. Sistine? She started crying. Immediately not happy crying. Terrified. Please don't run. I got up. Why would I run? People do. I'm not people. That's exactly what people say. I moved around the table. She pushed back from me at first, then grabbed my shirt. Please don't leave me. I hugged her. I don't know why that fear was so deep in her. Past relationship. Childhood, maybe both. I went to her giant yarn pile, found her favorite thread, variegated red, cut several inches, tied it around her finger. She stared at it. Call it an engagement ring. She wiped her face. I always knew you were cheap. I love you. She pressed her forehead against my chest, then suddenly pulled away. Wait, she cut another piece. Tied it around my finger. There, What's this? So nobody gets any ideas. I held up my hand. Perfect. And I meant it. We weren't legally engaged. Not yet. But that red thread became our ring. She wore hers every day. So did I. Except mine frayed constantly because I wasn't careful. She kept replacing it. The one I wear now is the last one she tied. I sat in that hospital waiting room for hours. I counted ceiling tiles. Paced, sat, stood again. Checked my phone. Nobody called. I bummed cigarettes from strangers even though I had mostly quit. One man asked who I was waiting for. My girlfriend. What happened? Pregnant. That was all I could say. After around 3 hours, I couldn't take it anymore. I went to the desk. An older nurse sat there. Kind face. Reading glasses. Excuse me. She looked up. Can you please tell me what's happening with my girlfriend? Of course, honey. She turned toward the computer. Name? I gave Sistine's full name. The nurse typed. Paused. Typed again. Spell the last name? I did. More typing. Her expression changed. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I don't see her. My stomach tightened. What does that mean? Maybe she hasn't been entered correctly. She was taken into surgery. Okay, the nurse smiled, but less naturally. I'll call upstairs. Is she okay? Have a seat. I'll find her. I returned to my chair. Watched. She called. Waited. Spoke. Her brow furrowed. Hung up. Called another number. Then another. Each time, her expression became more confused. Eventually, she motioned me over. Can you confirm her name again? I did. And date of birth? I gave it. Address? Ours, she typed. Nothing. Is there another last name? No. Nickname? No, maybe she came in under... She was literally in an exam room with me. The nurse looked uncomfortable. Do you remember the room? I pointed down the hall. We found it. Empty, fresh paper on the bed. Clean, no sign anyone had been there. That's not possible. The nurse called staff. One nurse remembered me. That gave me hope. You were with a woman? Yes, she frowned. Pregnant? Yes. Wait, she walked away. Returned, I'm sorry. I thought I remembered, but I think I'm mixing you up with someone else. I started shouting. Security came, not aggressively. They tried calming me. I demanded they check surgery. They did. No Sistine. Recovery, no. Labor and delivery. No morgue, no. Admissions, no record. No medical chart. No billing record. Nothing. A pregnant woman had been wheeled past dozens of people and disappeared. I left the hospital feeling like I had been shot. That is the closest comparison I have. My body still worked. I could walk, but everything inside me felt destroyed. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time, then noticed the air freshener. Black ice. A little black pine tree hanging near the steering column. I stared. Sistine hated black ice. Horrible guy smell, she called it. What does that mean? It smells like a man named Chad owns 3 motorcycles he doesn't know how to ride. She replaced mine with leather, then bourbon, then fresh shave. When pregnancy made smells difficult, I removed air fresheners completely. But black ice was hanging there now. Fresh, I touched it. Maybe I had put it back. Maybe while she was in the hospital. No, that made no sense. I drove. A car followed too closely. I looked into the rearview mirror and saw my back seat. Empty. No car seat. I slammed on the brakes. The driver behind me almost hit me. Horn blaring. I pulled over, climbed into the back. Nothing, fast food wrappers. An ice scraper, old receipt. No car seat. I had installed it myself. Spent almost an hour doing it. Watched 3 videos. Got grease on both hands from adjusting something. Sistine had laughed because I treated installation like I was preparing a rocket launch. Gone, not removed. There weren't even marks where the base had pressed into the seat. I drove home too fast, ran upstairs. The first thing I saw was the apartment door. Plain, no patriotic wreath. My hands started shaking. I opened it. The apartment was wrong. Our walls had been covered in cysteine, craft projects, paintings, photos, crochet, everything. Now they were bare. Gray couch, no colorful blankets, no ridiculous throw pillows. I went to the shelves, empty except my books. Kitchen, no mugs she bought, no tea she drank, no vitamins, no strange flavored sparkling water. Bathroom, one toothbrush. Mine, closet, only my clothes. No heels, no bootcut jeans, no dresses, no hoodies stolen from my side. Bedroom, black comforter. Navy sheets, exactly how my room had looked before Sistine moved in. I opened my sketchbooks. Blank, every drawing of her gone, not pages ripped out. Blank paper. Then the nursery. I almost didn't open it. We had painted the walls soft blue. Sistine wanted clouds on the ceiling. I thought it looked stupid. She told me my opinion was legally irrelevant because she was carrying the baby. We spent an entire weekend sponging white clouds overhead. We argued over furniture placement. Crib near the door. No, away from the door. Changing table near the window. No, too drafty. Rocking chair there. No, there now I opened the door. Office, the old office. White walls. Desk, chair, laptop, no blue. No clouds, no crib. Nothing, my legs gave out. I sat against the wall. Then I saw the red yarn around my finger. Still there. That was the only thing. I grabbed it. Pulled, reel, frayed, knotted. Proof of what? I tried calling Sistine. Contact gone. Her number wasn't in my phone. I typed it manually. Disconnected, social media. Nothing. Her accounts didn't exist. Her family contacts were gone, too. I knew her mother's name. Searched. Found a woman with the same name. Different family photos. No daughter named Sistine. I called. I shouldn't have. Hello? Mrs. Yes? My name is Dakota. Pause. Okay? Is Sistine there? Long silence. Who? My throat closed. Your daughter. I don't have a daughter named Sistine. I hung up. Work was worse. The framed ultrasound photo on my desk was gone. A coworker asked why I looked terrible. I said my girlfriend disappeared. He stared. What girlfriend? Everybody thought I was single. Some remembered me mentioning dates months earlier. No one remembered Sistine. I checked emails, texts, photos, lease documents. Nothing. One lease. My name. Utilities, mine, bank statements showed grocery purchases that should have included 2 people, but amounts were different. Restaurant reservations were for 1. Vacation bookings I remembered making together either didn't exist or showed only me. The world had rewritten itself around her absence, except me and the ring. For weeks, I barely functioned. I stopped sleeping properly. I drank too much. I went back to the hospital repeatedly. Security eventually recognized me. I requested camera footage from that day. They wouldn't give it to me without formal processes. I filed what I could. Eventually, one sympathetic administrator let me see a small portion. I wish she hadn't. The footage showed me entering the emergency department. Alone, I walked beside an empty wheelchair. I held one hand out, like I was helping someone, but nobody was there. At one point, I turned and spoke toward empty space. Then I sat in the exam room, alone, for over 2 hours. Sometimes I looked toward the bed and smiled. Sometimes I reached out. There was nothing there. Then the emergency started. Staff rushed into my room. Not for Sistine. For me. The footage showed me standing suddenly, dropping something, running into the hallway, chasing an empty gurney as another patient was moved past. An orderly stopped me. I fought him. The administrator paused the video. I'm sorry. No, I pointed. She was there. She said nothing. Show me the room camera. There isn't one. Hallway, she continued. Nothing. No pregnant woman. No Sistine. Just me. I started wondering if I was insane. That would have been easier. Psychotic break. Delusion. Maybe I invented an entire relationship. But then how do you invent memories with texture? Her snort laugh. The scar on her knee from falling off a bicycle when she was 11. How she hated mayonnaise, but liked deviled eggs and refused to acknowledge the contradiction. The way she whispered dialogue along with the Office episodes. The exact feel of her head on my shoulder. Could a brain fabricate years of physical memory? Maybe. People tell me it can. Then there was the ring. Doctors said I might have tied it myself. Of course. Any physical evidence can be explained once everyone agrees only you remember what it means. I started writing everything down. Every memory. Our first meeting, first date, first fight, pregnancy, appointments, names of doctors, names she liked for the baby. She liked Rowan. I liked Elliot. We hadn't decided. I wrote because memories were beginning to scare me. Tiny details started slipping. Her exact eye color. Green, hazel, I knew. Then suddenly I couldn't be certain. That terrified me more than anything. If the world had erased her, maybe I was next. Not my body, my memory of her. I began repeating facts every morning. Sistine existed. She loved crochet. She hated black ice air fresheners. She was 32 weeks pregnant. She tied red yarn around my finger. We were going to have a baby. I said them aloud, like prayer. For almost 2 months, nothing changed. Then I found the first impossible thing. A strand of red yarn on my kitchen floor. Same variegated color as the ring. I picked it up, followed it. Another strand near the hallway. Then another. They led to the office, the room that should have been the nursery. I opened the door. One small white mark was on the ceiling. Paint, cloud paint. Barely visible. I climbed onto the desk, touched it. White paint rubbed onto my finger. I cried. The next morning it was gone. A week later I woke hearing someone crocheting. If you've lived with someone who crochets constantly, you know the sound. Tiny hook, yarn sliding, a soft repetitive movement. I followed it to the living room. Empty, on the couch was a red yarn ring, smaller than mine, tiny, too small for an adult finger. I picked it up. It disappeared from my palm while I was looking at it. I know how that sounds. I started therapy after that. I didn't tell the therapist everything. Mostly grief, loss, memory. She asked whether perhaps Sistine represented a future I wanted rather than a literal person. I stopped going. Then I dreamed of the hospital. Sistine was sitting on the exam bed, pregnant, yarn ring intact. She looked exhausted. I ran to her. She held up a hand. Don't. Where are you? She looked toward the door. I don't know. Are you dead? I don't know. Is the baby okay? Her face broke. I don't know. I started crying. Come back. I'm trying. Then something moved behind the privacy curtain. Sistine looked terrified. What? When they asked, don't say I'm gone. Who? Don't agree. With what? The curtain moved again. She whispered, they make things easier when you agree. I woke. My yarn ring was wet, not sweat. Hospital disinfectant. That sharp chemical smell. I drove to the ER immediately. Same hospital. I sat in the parking lot until sunrise. Nothing. 2 days later, I received a call. Unknown number. I answered. Static, then breathing. Hello? A woman's voice, very weak. I nearly dropped the phone. Sistine? The line cracked. Don't, Sistine. Don't let them. Static swallowed several words. Where are you? I'm still. Then a baby cried. Very faint. My knees buckled. Sistine? The voice came back. I'm sorry. No, tell me where you are. They said it would hurt less. Who? They said you would forget. I won't. Silence, then. You already are. The call ended. The number didn't exist when I called back. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, I've remembered more from the emergency room, or maybe invented more. I don't know anymore. I remember one doctor entering before I went for water. I hadn't remembered him originally. Tall, older, no name badge. He stood near Sistine's feet and asked, "Do you consent to emergency preservation if required?" Sistine looked confused. "What does that mean?" He smiled. "Keeping what can be kept." She looked toward me. I said, "Do whatever you need to do." The doctor looked directly at me. "You agree?" "Yes," Sistine said. "D, wait." But I was scared. I said it again. "Yes," the doctor smiled. "Good." Then Sistine asked me for water. I left. Keeping what can be kept. I have searched medical terminology. No procedure called that. No consent form. Nothing. I keep wondering what exactly I agreed to. Maybe none of this happened. Maybe I am constructing a villain because randomness is unbearable. But last night, I went through the documents from the hospital again. One paper had changed. My discharge paperwork. I don't remember being discharged because, according to the normal version of events, I wasn't admitted. Yet I had a page in the folder. At the bottom, patient, Dakota status, stable dependence. Then beneath that, in handwriting, preservation successful. Memory residue persists. I stared at it for a long time. Below that, do not re-engage unless residue becomes contagious. Contagious, that word has kept me awake all night. Because 2 days ago, my coworker stopped beside my desk. He pointed at my yarn ring. "Hey, what? Didn't your girlfriend make those?" I froze. "What did you say?" He frowned. "Your girlfriend." "What girlfriend?" "Sis, something." My heart started hammering. "Sistine?" His face changed. "Yeah, you remember her?" "I think so." "When?" He rubbed his forehead. "I don't know." Then blood started running from his nose. He stumbled. I caught him. He whispered she was pregnant. I almost cried. "Yes, she used to bring you lunch. Yes, she made that ugly scarf." I laughed and sobbed at the same time. It was ugly. He looked terrified. Why did I forget? Then he collapsed. At the hospital, doctors said dehydration. Stress. He remembers nothing now. Not the conversation, not Sistine. Nothing, but the next morning another coworker asked me why there used to be an ultrasound picture on my desk. Then she forgot asking. Memory residue persists. Contagious, maybe remembering Sistine is something that spreads. Maybe that is why everything had to erase her so completely. I don't know what she encountered in that hospital. I don't know who they are. I don't know whether our baby survived. I don't know whether Sistine is dead, alive, somewhere in between, or trapped in some place where existence itself can be removed from records and people. But I know she existed. I know it. And I am writing this because I'm scared that someday I won't. Sistine was funny, bright, stubborn. She crocheted constantly. She quoted The Office. She could change a tire faster than I could. She hated black ice. She loved red yarn. She was 30, 2 weeks pregnant. She called me D. She rested her head on my shoulder. She laughed. She was afraid I would leave when she told me about the baby. I tied an engagement ring around her finger. She tied one around mine. She existed. Sistine existed. Our baby existed. I need somebody else to know that. Maybe memory really is contagious. If it is, good. Let it spread. Let enough people remember her that whatever erased her can't keep the lie stable. Because something happened this morning. I woke to the sound of a baby crying. It came from the office. The old nursery. I opened the door. The walls were blue again. Not completely. Only patches. Like another room was showing through this one. White clouds appeared faintly across the ceiling. The desk flickered in and out. For half a second, I saw the crib. Then office. Then crib again. The crying continued. I walked inside. On the floor was red yarn. A strand leading toward the wall. I followed it. At the far end, words had been written across the paint. Not marker. Yarn embedded in the wall itself. D. I touched it. Another word appeared. Remember then, U.S. I said, I remember. The baby stopped crying. The room became normal. Office again. But something remained. A handprint on the wall. Small, adult hand. Sistine's. I know because one finger bends slightly wrong from when she broke it as a teenager. Beside it was another print. Tiny. A baby's hand. I'm sitting against that wall now. The yarn ring on my finger feels tighter than usual. My phone has rung 3 times from an unknown number. I haven't answered yet. Part of me is terrified. But if it's her, I have to. Maybe she is trying to come back. Maybe remembering is how I pull her through. Or maybe this is exactly what that note meant by re-engagement. Maybe whatever removed her has noticed that the memory is spreading. I don't care anymore. They already took the life I wanted. They erased my fiancé. They erased my child. They erased photographs, paperwork, furniture, paint, medical records, every person who ever knew her. But they missed me. They left one witness, and they left the red ring. That was their mistake. The phone is ringing again. Unknown number. I answered. For a few seconds, there was only hospital noise, monitors, footsteps, a distant announcement. Then Sistine whispered, "Dee, I'm here." She started crying. So did I. I knew you wouldn't forget. Where are you? I don't know. Is the baby with you? A pause, then a tiny cry. Yes, I covered my mouth. I'm coming. No, what? Her voice became urgent. Don't come here. How do I get you out? You don't. I'm not leaving you there. You have to listen. Behind her, someone spoke. Male voice. Calm, memory residue confirmed. Sistine gasped. "Dee, hang up. Who is that?" "Please." The male voice came closer. "Mister, we need you to stop remembering." I couldn't breathe. What did you do to her? We preserved what could be preserved. What does that mean? Your partner and dependent could not remain in your version of events. My version? Dakota, hang up. Sistine screamed. The man continued as though she hadn't spoken. The correction was necessary. Bring them back. That would destabilize everyone connected to you. I don't care. You will. No, eventually, I looked at the yarn ring. No, the man sighed. Then we will correct you too. The call ended. The office light went out. I'm writing as fast as I can now because things are changing. The yarn ring is fading. Not physically. I can see it, but every few seconds I forget why I'm wearing it. I read what I've written, and the name Sistine feels strange for half a second before coming back. I've written her name across my arms in marker. Sistine, 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 I wrote. She was real. The baby was real. Do not believe them. There is someone outside my apartment door. They haven't knocked. I can see shoes beneath the gap. Hospital shoes. White, motionless. My phone just received a notification. No sender. One sentence. Please prepare for discharge. I don't know what that means. Maybe they're coming to erase me. Maybe tomorrow this apartment will belong to someone else. Maybe my coworkers won't remember I worked with them. Maybe my parents will have always had no son. If that happens, maybe this story disappears too. So if you are reading it, do one thing for me. Remember her name. Sistine, she was 30, 2 weeks pregnant. She laughed until she snorted. She wore my hoodies. She could change a tire. She hated black ice. She tied red yarn around my finger because she didn't want anybody getting ideas. She was the love of my life. And if enough of you remember her, maybe somewhere in whatever place they put her, she'll know I kept my promise. The person outside just knocked. 3 soft taps. Then a man's voice said, "Dakota, it's time. I'm not opening the door. Not until I write her name one more time." Sistine, she existed. And so did our child. When I was in 6th grade, my last class of the day was PE. That was probably the best possible period to have gym, because even if you ended up sweaty or tired, you only had to survive one more bell before going home. At least, that was how I thought about it at the time. Our middle school wasn't very big. It was a single main building with a gym attached to one side, a small parking lot in front, and a narrow road that looped around the entire property. There was only one proper entrance to the school grounds and one exit, so cars followed this rounded road around the building before heading back out. Because of some state fitness requirement, every student had to be able to complete a mile in under 15 minutes. Our gym teacher took that requirement very seriously. Every few weeks, he would make us practice. Some kids ran, some jogged. Most of us walked quickly enough to pretend we were trying. The route was simple. We went outside through the back entrance near the gym and followed the road around the school. 4 laps around the building came out to roughly a mile. Once you finished your 4th lap, you were supposed to stop near the back doors and wait there until everyone else finished. It was boring, but easy. The day this happened seemed completely normal. Weather was mild, maybe a little cloudy. I remember the sky being pale and washed out, but not stormy. No rain, no wind strong enough to notice. Just an ordinary afternoon near the end of the school day. I was walking with my friend, Brandon. Brandon was my only real friend at the time. I don't know if I would have chosen him as a friend under different circumstances. He was the kind of kid who always needed to be right about everything. If you told him something had happened, something bigger had happened to him. If you learned a new fact, he already knew it. If you liked a band, he had known about them before they were popular. He also believed a lot of strange things. Aliens, secret government programs, ghosts, hidden messages in television shows. He once spent an entire lunch period explaining to me why he thought dreams were actually memories from alternate versions of ourselves. I thought most of it was nonsense. But when you're 12 and don't have many friends, you tolerate a lot. So we walked together during PE. We were usually near the back of the group because neither of us cared about finishing quickly. The athletic kids would disappear around the first corner almost immediately. Everyone else eventually spread out around the loop. Brandon and I usually talked about games, teachers we hated, or whatever strange theory he had discovered online recently. That day, I remember him talking about déjà vu. He said déjà vu happened when 2 timelines briefly overlapped. I laughed. That doesn't even make sense. It does. No, it doesn't. You just don't understand quantum physics. You don't understand quantum physics. I understand more than you. You got a C in science. That's because Mr. Keller hates me. That was basically how most conversations with Brandon went. By our 3rd lap, almost everyone had finished. We could see small groups gathering near the back of the school when we passed that side. Our gym teacher was standing near the door with a clipboard. He yelled at us to pick up the pace. Brandon shouted something sarcastic back. I told him to shut up before he got us in trouble. We continued. 4th lap. Last one. By then, there was only one other student still ahead of us. I don't remember his name anymore. That bothers me slightly now, because I remember almost everything else. I think he was in another class period normally and had been put with us that day for some reason. Or maybe he had always been there and I simply didn't know him. Either way, he was maybe 40 or 50 yards ahead. Blue gym shorts, gray school t-shirt, white shoes. Nothing strange. We followed him around the side of the building toward the front. The road curved there, so for a few seconds the building blocked our view. The kid ahead suddenly started running, not jogging. Running, like someone had shouted his name or he had suddenly remembered he was late. Brandon noticed too. Look at this dude. I laughed. He finally remembered we're being timed. He's still failing. The boy reached the corner and disappeared from view. Brandon and I kept walking. No rush. Maybe 30 seconds later, we came around the same corner. The front of the school stretched ahead. Empty, the boy was gone. I stopped for half a second. Where'd he go? Brandon looked around. He ran. I know. So he's ahead. Where? The road along the front of the school was straight and open. There were no bushes big enough to hide behind. No side entrance nearby. No path cutting through the parking lot that would have made sense. If he had continued running, we should have seen him. He would have needed to cover an absurd amount of distance in the few seconds he had been out of sight. Brandon shrugged. Maybe he booked it. Like what, Olympic speed? He could have gone inside. The front doors are way down there. The main entrance was still visible ahead of us. Nobody was near it. Brandon looked behind us. Nothing. Then he smiled. Maybe he disappeared. Shut up. I'm serious. No, you're not. Timeline overlap. You were literally just talking about that. Exactly, I rolled my eyes. At the time, I genuinely didn't care much. Kids do weird things. Maybe the boy cut through somewhere we hadn't noticed. Maybe he ran across the parking lot. Maybe I had misjudged how much time passed. There were plenty of explanations. We kept walking. As we reached the front entrance, something felt slightly different. I didn't identify it immediately. I think the first thing I noticed was the traffic. Normally, near the end of the school day, there were always cars, parents arriving early, teachers leaving for appointments, delivery trucks, people driving along the road beyond the property. That afternoon, there was nothing. No cars moving, no engines, no horns. I could see the road outside the school grounds. Empty again. I didn't panic. It was strange, but not impossible. We continued around the next side. Brandon had stopped talking. That was unusual enough by itself. I asked, "What?" He looked at the building. "Nothing, what? Do you hear anything?" I listened. At first, I didn't understand the question. Then I did. Nothing, no voices, no doors, no basketballs bouncing inside the gym, no whistles, no students laughing near the back. Even the normal mechanical hum from the building seemed absent. I remember hearing our shoes against the pavement. That was all. "Step, step, step," I said. "Everyone's probably inside." "Why?" "I don't know. Class isn't over. Maybe Coach brought them in." Brandon didn't answer. We rounded the final corner. The back entrance came into view. I expected to see everyone standing there. Nobody. The space was completely empty. I stopped. Brandon stopped too. The gym doors were shut. The asphalt where our classmates had been waiting minutes earlier was empty. No backpacks, no water bottles, no gym teacher. "Nothing? Where is everyone?" I asked. Brandon looked strangely pleased. That annoyed me. This is weird. "No kidding. Told you." "Told me what?" "Timeline, oh my God, Brandon, explain it." "They went inside." "All of them?" "Yes, without us?" I looked at the door. Honestly, that wasn't impossible. Our gym teacher wasn't exactly careful about head counts. If everybody else finished and someone assumed Brandon and I had already gone inside, they could have left us. Wouldn't surprise me. I pulled the handle. Locked. That changed things. I tried again. Nothing. The back doors were normally unlocked during PE because students were constantly moving between the gym and fields. Now they wouldn't open. Brandon tried another door. Locked, too. "Great," I sighed. "We have to go around front." We had just walked a mile, and now we needed another half lap just to get back inside. I was irritated more than frightened. That feeling didn't last. We walked toward the front again. The silence became harder to ignore. Our school sat near a residential neighborhood. Dogs barked, cars passed, lawn equipment ran. Usually there was always something. Now I couldn't hear any of it. No birds either. That's one detail I didn't remember until years later. No birds. Not one. By the time we reached the front doors, Brandon was no longer making jokes. The main entrance was unlocked. We went in. Immediately, I noticed the office. The front office had a large window facing the entrance. There was always someone behind it. Secretary, attendance clerk, principal, somebody. The office was empty. Lights on, computer monitors glowing, a chair pushed away from a desk. But no people. I walked closer. Hello? My voice sounded too loud. No response. Brandon looked through the window. Maybe there's an assembly. Without us? Maybe. I tried the office door. Unlocked, I stepped inside. I probably wasn't supposed to, but at that point I wanted to find somebody. There was a cup on one desk. Steam rose faintly from it. I remember that clearly. Coffee, still hot. A phone receiver sat in place. Papers were spread across another desk. Everything looked like people had been there moments ago. But they were gone. Brandon picked up a pen. I snapped, put that down. Why? Because it's not yours. Who cares? Nobody's here. That sentence made my stomach tighten. Nobody's here. We left the office. The hallway beyond was empty. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Finally, a sound. I almost felt relieved by that buzzing. We went toward the gym. Our shoes squeaked occasionally against the polished floor. I expected someone to turn a corner. Teacher, student, janitor, anyone. Nobody did. The gym doors were open. We stepped inside. Empty, lights on. Basketballs in the rack. Bleachers folded against the wall. No class. No teacher. Coach? I shouted. My voice echoed. Coach, 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 then silence. Brandon looked at me. This isn't normal. That was the first time he admitted it without sounding excited. No. What time is it? I didn't have a phone. Middle school. This was before every 12-year-old had one. There was a clock on the gym wall. 3:11. That seemed right. School ended around 3:20. Classes should still have been happening. We walked back into the hallway. I said, maybe there's an emergency. What kind? I don't know. Fire drill? There would be alarms. Evacuation, we would have seen everyone outside. Maybe they went somewhere else. All 600 people? I didn't answer. We checked classrooms. The first one was unlocked. Desks, books, a teacher's notes written on the whiteboard. Backpacks beside desks. No people. That frightened me. Backpacks, students hadn't gone home. Their stuff was still there. We checked another room. Same, a worksheet lay on one desk with a pencil resting across it. A textbook was open. One chair sat pushed backward like somebody had just stood up. Nobody? Hello? Brandon shouted. Nothing. We went farther. Science room. Empty library, empty cafeteria, empty. I remember the cafeteria lights being on. A trash can still smelled like lunch. Everything was ordinary except for the complete absence of human beings. After a few minutes, I stopped feeling like we were searching for people. It felt like we were trespassing, like the school belonged to something else now. Brandon said, "What if everyone vanished?" Stop, I'm serious. People don't vanish. Then where are they? I didn't know. We passed our own classroom. I looked inside. My backpack was still beside my desk. That really scared me. I had left it there because PE was the last class, and we were supposed to come back for our things afterward. I walked in, picked it up, then put it back down. I don't know why. Maybe taking it felt like admitting something was wrong. Brandon suddenly said, "Look." He was pointing toward the clock, 3:11. Still, I stared. How long have we been inside? Like 10 minutes. The second hand wasn't moving. I approached. Stopped. Batteries dead. Brandon pointed toward another classroom clock across the hall. 3:11. We went to the office. The digital clock on a computer screen, 3:11 p.m. I felt something cold move through my chest. No, Brandon whispered, told you. Shut up. We're somewhere else. We're not somewhere else. Then explain the clocks. I couldn't. We went to the front doors. Outside, the light looked wrong. Not dramatically, just flatter. The sky had lost some color. Everything beyond the school grounds looked slightly faded, like a photograph left in sunlight. Brandon said, we should leave. Go where? Home. Our homes were several miles away. And if everyone comes back? He didn't answer. That was when we heard something. Footsteps, far down the hallway behind us. Both of us turned. Step, pause, step, someone walking slowly. Relief hit first. Hello, I shouted. The footsteps stopped. Coach? Nothing. Brandon moved closer to me. Then the footsteps started again. Step, 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 faster, coming toward us. I expected someone to appear around the corner. Nobody did. The sound became louder, closer, yet the hallway stayed empty. Brandon grabbed my sleeve. Outside, we ran through the front doors. I don't remember making a conscious decision to go around the building again. We simply did, running at first, then walking once we were outside. The sunlight felt warmer almost immediately. I heard something in the distance. Pop, a car door, then a bird. I stopped. Did you hear that? Brandon nodded. Then we heard traffic. Normal traffic. Faint but real. A car passed on the road. The world seemed to be making noise again. We rounded the side of the school. At the back corner, voices appeared all at once. Kids laughing, coach yelling, someone complaining about being tired. It was so sudden that I stopped walking. We turned the corner. Everyone was there. Our whole PE class, standing exactly where they were supposed to be. Some sitting on the pavement, some leaning against the wall. Our teacher holding his clipboard. The student who had been ahead of us was there too, the one who had disappeared around the corner. He was bent over with his hands on his knees, breathing hard. Nobody reacted like anything unusual had happened. Coach looked at us. There you two are. I stared at him. Brandon said, where were you? Coach frowned. Where were we? We came around before, and nobody was here. A few kids looked at us. Coach glanced at his clipboard. You two just finished. No, I looked at Brandon. We went inside. Coach's expression changed. You weren't supposed to go inside. The door was locked. What door? The back door. He pulled it open immediately. Unlocked, noise from inside the school spilled out. Students, voices, lockers, the normal chaos of the final few minutes before dismissal. I stared through the doorway. Our classmates started going inside. Brandon leaned toward me. Don't say anything. I whispered. Why? Because they'll think we're lying. He was right. Honestly, we didn't even know what we would have told them. We walked in. The school was full again. Teachers talking, students packing bags, phones ringing in the office, someone pushing a cart down the hall. I looked at the clock. 3:12. 1 minute had passed. 1 minute. Brandon and I had spent at least 10 minutes walking through the empty building, probably closer to 15. The clock said 1 minute. I checked another. Same, 3:12. I felt nauseous. We went to our classroom for our bags. Everything looked exactly as it had in the empty version. My backpack was beside the desk. The same worksheet remained on another student's table. The same pencil. The same open textbook. Except now students were sitting around them. Our teacher was at her desk. I stared at her coffee cup. Steam rose from it. Exactly like the cup I had seen in the empty office. The bell rang. Everyone left. Brandon and I walked out together. We didn't talk until we reached the point where our routes home separated. Then he said timeline overlap. Normally, I would have told him he was an idiot. Instead, I asked, "Do you actually think that?" He shrugged. "What else? Maybe we got confused. For 15 minutes? Maybe everyone was at an assembly. You saw the backpacks. I know. And the clocks. I know. And the footsteps." I didn't respond. Brandon looked back toward the school. What if we weren't supposed to go inside? That thought followed me home. For the next few days, I waited for someone to mention it. Teacher, coach, another student. Nobody did. I eventually asked the boy who had been walking ahead of us, "Hey, when we were doing the mile, where did you go?" He looked confused. "What? You ran around the front corner." "Yeah, then we couldn't see you." He shrugged. I ran. "Were you waiting at the back?" "Yeah, did you see us come around earlier?" "No, you sure?" He gave me a strange look. "Why?" "Nothing, I dropped it." Brandon and I talked about the event a few times afterward. His explanation changed constantly. Alternate dimension. Time slip. Government experiment. Ghost school. Aliens, eventually. Even he stopped bringing it up. Middle school ended. We went to different high schools. Lost contact. For years, I barely thought about it. When I did, I explained it away. Childhood memory is unreliable. Maybe Brandon and I walked into the school during a weirdly quiet few minutes. Maybe classes had ended early. Maybe people were temporarily outside. Maybe the clocks were broken, or I remembered the time incorrectly. The footsteps could have been pipes. The missing boy simply ran faster than expected. Normal explanations. That was what I believed until several years ago, when I happened to drive past the old school. I hadn't been there since I was a teenager. The building looked smaller than I remembered. They had repainted it, added security fencing, changed the main entrance. But the roundabout road was still there. I pulled into the parking lot. I don't know why. Nostalgia, maybe. School was out for summer, so the building was closed. I sat in my car looking at it. Then I remembered that afternoon. The empty hallways. 311. Footsteps with nobody there. I decided to walk the old PE route. Stupid, maybe, but I wanted to see whether memory had exaggerated the distances. I walked around once. Then again. The building blocked the front corner exactly as I remembered. On the third lap, I noticed someone ahead of me. A boy, maybe 12 years old. Gray shirt, blue shorts, white shoes. I slowed down. There shouldn't have been any students there. Summer, locked school. I almost called out. Then the boy started running. My entire body went cold. He reached the corner. Disappeared. I stopped. No, I refused to follow. I turned around and went directly back toward my car. Halfway there, my phone vibrated. A text. Unknown number. I opened it. 4 words. "You finally came back." I stood still. Another message arrived. Brandon remembers too. My hands started shaking. I tried calling the number. Nothing. Disconnected. I searched for Brandon online that night. It took a while. We hadn't spoken in years. Eventually, I found an account that looked like his. I sent a message. "Hey, weird question. Do you remember what happened during PE in 6th grade when the school was empty?" He replied the next morning. Immediately after I woke, "Actually, yeah, that was all." I asked, "Have you ever figured it out?" He took almost an hour. Then, "I don't think we came back at the same time." I stared at that sentence. "What do you mean?" Another long pause. "When we came back, you asked me not to tell anyone. I read it 3 times. I typed no. You told me not to say anything." Brandon replied, "No. Then you said they'd think we were lying." I remembered those words, but in my memory, he had said them. I wrote, "That was you." He didn't answer for a day. Then, "Do you remember the footsteps?" "Yes. Do you remember what happened before we ran outside?" I thought. The hallway, footsteps we left. That was all. I replied we heard them coming toward us and ran. His answer, no. I asked, what do you remember? He sent, they reached the corner. My stomach tightened. What reached the corner? He didn't answer immediately. Then, us. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because I didn't understand. He sent another message. 2 kids came around the corner. Me and you. Same clothes, same everything. I stopped breathing. I had no memory of that. Then they were walking toward us. You grabbed me and ran. I typed, that never happened. He replied, I know what I saw. I called him. He answered. We talked for almost 2 hours. Our memories matched almost perfectly until the footsteps. In his version, the sound approached. Then 2 figures turned the far corner. Brandon and me. Copies, the other Brandon was smiling. The other me wasn't. According to him, I grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the exit before the copies reached us. I remembered none of that. What did they do, I asked. Walked, that's it? Toward us. Did they say anything? Brandon went quiet. Brandon? The other you did. What? He said my name. A chill moved through me. What exactly? Just Brandon. Anything else? No. What did the other you look like? Like you. Exactly? Pause, no. What was different? His eyes. What about them? I don't remember. That answer frightened me more than a description would have. We compared other memories. The clocks, the empty office, the boy running ahead. Everything. Then Brandon told me something I had never known. After middle school, he returned to the building one evening with 2 friends. He wanted to prove the story. Nothing happened. Years later, he tried again. Nothing then. At 24, he drove past at exactly 3:11 p.m. The school was active. Cars, kids, teachers. He made 1 lap around the building. When he reached the back, everyone was gone. Just for a few seconds. Then he blinked. Normal again. He never went back. I told him about the boy I had just seen. Gray shirt, blue shorts, white shoes. Brandon became silent. What? That wasn't the kid ahead of us. Yes, it was. No, I remember him. The guy ahead of us was wearing red. I almost argued. Then realized I wasn't sure. Gray? Was it gray? I could see it clearly in my memory, but the harder I focused, the less certain I became. What if neither of us remembers correctly? I asked. Brendan said, I don't think memory works properly there. We haven't found an explanation. I looked into the school's history. Nothing remarkable. No mass deaths. No missing students matching the date. No strange construction. Nothing that would explain an empty version of the building existing beside the normal one. I found a few old local forum posts from former students. Most were ordinary nostalgia. One caught my attention. A woman described being accidentally locked outside during lunch in the late 1990s. She walked around to the front entrance and found the whole school empty. She assumed there was a drill. When she went back outside, everyone was suddenly in the courtyard. She said she had been inside for 5 minutes. Her friend claimed she had been missing for less than 30 seconds. Another former student commented underneath, did the clock stop? The original poster never answered. The account that asked the question had been deleted. Maybe that means nothing. Stories influence other stories. People exaggerate. Memories spread. I understand that. But I keep thinking about the boy ahead of Brandon and me. For years, I assumed he disappeared because he entered whatever happened to us first. Now I wonder if it was the opposite. Maybe he was running because he already knew what happened if you stayed behind too long. Maybe he wasn't another student at all. There's another detail I only recently remembered. When Brandon and I returned to the group, the boy was there, bent over, hands on his knees, breathing hard. I remember looking at him. He looked up at me, not Brandon, me, and for just a second, he shook his head, very slightly, like a warning. I didn't understand it then. Maybe I'm inventing that memory now. I genuinely don't know. That is what bothers me most. I can no longer tell which parts happened and which parts my mind filled in afterward. Brandon and I experienced something together. That much I'm certain of. The school emptied. Time stopped. Then everyone returned. But our memories have already started separating. Maybe his version is wrong. Maybe mine is. Maybe both are. Sometimes I wonder whether the two boys Brandon saw walking toward us weren't copies at all. Maybe they were the real versions. Maybe we were the ones who came back wrong. I know how ridiculous that sounds. But a few months ago, Brandon asked me a question. Do you remember what my last name is? Of course I did. I had known him for years. I opened my mouth. Nothing came. I searched online. The account I had been messaging no longer existed. Our conversation was gone from my phone. Screenshots, too. I can remember his first name. Brandon, I remember his face. Mostly, I remember walking beside him. I remember his ridiculous theories. But his last name is gone. So is the name of the student who ran ahead of us. And when I recently looked at my 6th grade yearbook, there was no Brandon in my class. No photograph, no name, nothing I called my mother. Asked whether she remembered him. My friend Brandon from middle school. She paused. You didn't really have friends in middle school. Yes, I did. Who? Brandon, I don't remember a Brandon. I hung up. I still remember him, for now. That's why I'm writing this down. When I was in 6th grade, my last class was PE. We had to walk 4 laps around the school. I was with my friend Brandon. There was another boy ahead of us. He ran around the corner and disappeared. When Brandon and I reached the back of the school, everyone was gone. We went inside. The entire building was empty. The clocks read 3:11. We heard footsteps. Then we came back outside. Everyone was there again. 1 minute had passed. Those things happened. I know they did. And if someday I read this and don't recognize Brandon's name, I want to know that I once did. Because last night, at exactly 3:11, I received another text from an unknown number. This time, it contained a photograph. 2 6th grade boys standing inside an empty school hallway. One of them is Brandon. The other one looks like me. Behind them, farther down the hall, 2 more boys are coming around the corner. Same clothes, same faces. 4 children. 2 Brandons. 2 of me. On the back wall, directly above the approaching pair, is a classroom clock. 3:11. There was one message beneath the photograph. You left before we could switch back. I haven't slept since. And for the first time in years, I'm starting to wonder whether I ever actually made it out of that school. Look, if you're still watching, you already know what this channel is. No jump scares, no fake drama, just real stories about real people who survived things most of us can't even imagine. And that's scarier than any movie could ever be. If you want more of this raw, unfiltered truth, told the way it deserves to be told, subscribe to Lacuna Noir. We're not here to waste your time. We're here to tell the stories that actually matter. Thanks for listening. Now go get some sleep, if you can.